Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Joanna Butler, and joining us this evening from the Royal Australian Navy is Captain Lisa Batchelor. 80 years ago, on the 12th of September 1944, two Japanese ships transporting prisoners of war from Singapore to Japan were sunk, resulting in the loss of over 1,500 Australian and British lives. The Japanese transported prisoners of war great distances across their empire, and today the stories of those who worked on the Burma-Thailand Railway and who died during the Sandakan death marches are well known. But the most dangerous period in a prisoner's life was travelling in captivity. Conditions on board ships were severe. Over 1,000 prisoners might be crammed into spaces suitable for a few hundred and given little food, fresh water, or adequate sanitation facilities. Some journeys lasted just a few days, but the longest was a voyage from Singapore to Japan, which took 70 days. The prisoners of war called these transports hell ships. The Rakuyo Maru, with 1,318 Australian and British prisoners of war aboard, and the Kachidoki Maru, carrying 900 British prisoners of war, were part of a convoy that left Singapore for Japan on the 6th of September 1944. The prisoners were survivors of the Burma-Thailand Railway, who had recently returned to Singapore. On the morning of the 12th of September 1944, the convoy was attacked by American submarines in the South China Sea. Rakuyo Maru was sunk by USS Sea Lion II and Kachidoki Maru by USS Pampanito. Prisoners able to evacuate the ships spent the following days in life rafts or clinging to the wreckage in open water. About 150 Australian and British survivors were rescued by American submarines. A further 500 were picked up by Japanese destroyers and continued the journey to Japan. Those not rescued perished at sea. Over 1,500 prisoners of war were killed in the incident. Some 22,000 Allied prisoners of the Japanese died in hell ship disasters, 19,000 of them as a result of friendly fire incidents. More Allied prisoners of war were lost on the hell ships than died on the Burma-Thailand Railway. In the largest of these disasters, 6,520 prisoners, mostly Indonesian labourers, were killed when the Junyo Maru was sunk on the 18th of September 1944. Today we remember those who died following the sinking of the Rakuyo Maru and the Kachidoki Maru. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. This evening, we warmly welcome the family of Corporal Alec Randolph Minchin, whose story will be told shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge Vice Admiral Frank Lenski, Commander of the German Fleet and Supporting Forces, and Vice Chief of the German Navy, accompanied by Commodore Michael Jacobson, Director General Submarines, and the accompanying delegation. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors to the memorial, and students on behalf of Northam Grammar School from Arcadia, New South Wales. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Corporal Alexander Randolph Minchin. Alexander Minchin was born at Dangan, a small town in the Shire of Quairading in the West Australian wheat belt, on the 4th of April 1914. Known as Alec, he was the 10th of 12 children, born to his father Frederick, and one of 8, born to his mother Lily May Minchin, Frederick's second wife. As a child, Alec attended the Dangan State School, a mile or so from the family farm. Prior to enlistment, Alec was a farmer. He learned his skills working the farm alongside his father and brothers, purchasing his own farm at Jennikibine, northwest of Quairading, WA, which he and his youngest brother Mervyn ran, until he sold it, just prior to enlisting for service in the Second World War. Alec took leave from service to marry Mabel Alice Stone in February of 1941 in Rockingham, Western Australia. Their son, Ronald Arthur, was born on the 2nd of April 1942. Sadly, father and son would never meet. At 26 years of age, Alec enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force in Claremont, Western Australia, on the 10th of August 1940, and commenced training at the Melville Training Depot at Northern Military Base near Perth. He was drafted to the 2nd 4th Machine Gun Battalion C Company, 11 Platoon, on the 27th of November 1940, and departed Darwin for overseas service in late December 1941. He was promoted to corporal on the 18th of January 1942. Alec was a keen participant in the 2nd 4th's cricket team, continuing a family passion for the sport that started with his father Fred's Minchin cricket team, made up of brothers, brothers-in-law and cousins from the local area of his youth, and included a cricket pitch being built on the family farm. The 2nd 4th Machine Gun Battalion was raised as a support unit to the 8th Division of the 2nd AIF. They trained in Western Australia, Adelaide and Darwin prior to departing for overseas in December of 1941. Arriving in Singapore on the 24th of January 1942, the men of the 2nd 4th disembarked to find the island under threat from regular Japanese bombing raids and the Allied forces preparing for defence. Alec deployed with C Company to the west and southwest of the island to support the 44th Indian Brigade. Direct attack by Japanese forces commenced on the 8th of February, when forces crossed the Johor Strait after days of air raids. The west coast of Singapore was in Japanese hands by the 10th of February, and fighting continued until Lieutenant General Arthur Percival surrendered Singapore on the 15th of February. Many Allied troops were captured and became prisoners of war, with most of the 2nd 4th's men concentrated in the Changi jail. Alec was part of the first group of prisoners selected to sail from Singapore, where he was held in the Serralang camp Changi, to Burma, and worked alongside other prisoners of war on building the Burma-Thailand Railway. On completion of the railroad towards the end of 1943, Alec, along with the other prisoners, were evacuated from Burma by the Japanese to one of several large camps in Thailand. In September 1944, the ship Rakuyo Maru, in company with the Kachidoki Maru, were transporting Australian and British prisoners of war from Singapore to Moji, Japan. The prisoners were all survivors of the Burma-Thailand Railway. Corporal Minchin, who had been determined by Japanese overseers as fit to work in Japan, was among them on the Rakuyo Maru. Conditions on board these transport ships were severe. Over 1,000 prisoners were crammed into spaces suitable for a few hundred and given little food, fresh water, or adequate sanitation facilities. The prisoners of war called these transports hell ships. While the horrors of Japanese captivity are well known, particularly the experiences of those forced to work on the Burma-Thailand Railway, onboard transport vessels, the overcrowding, sickness, disease, and the dangers posed by Allied submarines caused additional stress and anxiety amongst the prisoners. On the morning of the 12th of September 1944, the convoy was attacked by American submarines in the South China Sea. Rakuyo Maru was sunk by USS Sea Lion II, and Kachidoki Maru, carrying British prisoners, was sunk by USS Pampanito. Many prisoners survived the initial sinkings and spent the following days in life rafts or clinging to wreckage in the open water. About 150 Australian and British survivors were rescued by Japanese submarines. A further 500 were picked up by Japanese destroyers and were subsequently transported to Japan. Those not rescued perished at sea in the coming days. A total of 1,559 Australian and British prisoners of war were killed in the incident. The total number of Australians killed was 543. Corporal Alec Minchin was one of them. He was 30 years old. Alec survived the initial thinking of the Rakuyo Maru, succumbing to the elements at sea in the days after. He was declared lost at sea, presumed dead, on the 15th of September 1944. An account from his best mate, Phil Bilby, who survived to return to Australia, indicates that Alec was assisting others during his last hours, leading a relative, Elaine, to later comment, "It gives such a picture of just the sort of person Alec was, using the last of his strength to rescue others." With no grave but the sea, today Alec is commemorated at the Labuan Memorial in Malaysia, which commemorates over 2,000 men who died while prisoners of war in Borneo and the Philippines and have no known grave. Minchin is also commemorated on the Second World War Honour Roll in his home of Quairading in Western Australia. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal Alec Randolph Minchin, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Please be seated. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff, and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.